Hi, I'm Avery Davidson.
And I'm Kristen Oakes White. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, the only TV show bringing Louisiana farmers and consumers together every week. Well, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill passed by the Senate is now in the U.S. House of Representatives. But what's in it for Louisiana?
Those in the know say there are a lot of good things in the bill for Louisiana. However, there are parts of the infrastructure bill and the corresponding budget reconciliation bill that should concern Louisiana farmers and ranchers. And those are the parts that pay for everything.
I'm not going to trade Louisiana farms for $6 billion in infrastructure.
That's the sentiment of Louisiana Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry, Dr. Mike Strain, on the infrastructure bill passed by the U.S. Senate. The bipartisan bill includes several improvements important to Louisiana.
What has been earmarked within that bill, is about $6 billion for Louisiana. Overall, as it has left the Senate, there's about $110 billion that is for roads and physical infrastructure. There's also money in there for ports. There's about $65 billion or so for broadband internet.
People think that this is some all of a sudden new package that Congress decided we really need to handle infrastructure, but really it's every 5 years a highway bill that Congress has to take up to continually fund a lot of our just ongoing road and bridge projects and federal highways and those things. But this time around, there was a lot tacked on to make it an infrastructure bill, which has some really good provisions, including roads and bridges, our ports and waterways, and rural broadband, which is a big priority for us.
Louisiana Farm Bureau National Affairs Coordinator Andy Brown says he's working with the state's congressional delegation to ensure they know the concerns of farmers and ranchers, especially when it comes to finding money to pay for bridges and broadband. One concern of American Farm Bureau was the elimination of stepped-up basis when determining estate taxes.
Our delegation as a whole seems to be very understanding of the need to not put the pay-for of this bill on the backs of farmers and ranchers. They know how important that is to the economy of our state. And it's just, it's a simple, almost a moral issue of my family member passes away, has worked very hard to acquire land, to build capital, to build a business, and if they just want to pass that on to the next generation, why would you tax them to a level that they can't sustain?
It has been said over and over and over again, we're going to increase corporate taxes, we're going to increase capital gains taxes, and we are going to markedly increase inheritance taxes.
And if farmers and ranchers cannot pass their operations to the next generation, Strain is concerned about who could get control of agriculture.
And who's going to buy the farms? Will it be Wall Street, right? Or will it be foreign investors when your farmers, the families, can't continue to own the family farm upon the death of the parents?
Again, the bill is now in the House, which is controlled by the Democrats. But as you heard Louisiana Farm Bureau National Affairs Coordinator Andy Brown say, the Louisiana delegation knows the concerns of the state's farmers and ranchers. And of course, the price tag really is the concerning side. Obviously, we need broadband here in Louisiana. We need more roads and bridges. And this sort of bill is not an odd one because every 5 years or so, they pass something to pay for roads and bridges.
Right.
So the problem is we're so polarized, and we've got to really try to get past that.
It's the story across the board for everything.
I know. Hopefully we can all come together and we can get some good done, and it's not done on the backs of our farmers and ranchers. August 3rd marked the 100th anniversary of aerial application, or crop dusting as it was first called by many in agriculture. About 2,700 make a career in ag aviation across the country, but did you know its early days can be traced here to Louisiana?
This week, Tammy Arender takes us to Northeast Louisiana to meet a couple of third-generation pilots helping farmers grow the crops we depend on every day.
You could say Reed Keahey was practically born into this seat.
We're like the doctor to the crops. We get a prescription from our entomologist, and then we treat the crops for insecticide, fungicide, also some glyphosate.
Reed's father, Drew, started in the aerial application business when his father, Jack, took him under his wing, passing down the love of agriculture and flying.
Grew up watching him fly. I was a little bit too young to watch my grandpa fly, and it just, at first I didn't know if it was for me, and then it just called to me. And after meeting people of the industry and just real stand-up people.
It's awesome. It really is. To see how he progressed, you know, and me doing him like my dad did me, train me, and you do this and do that and do it the way I say, not the way I do.
The Keahey's home base is in Columbia, Louisiana, only about 70 miles from TWILA, where the Huff and DeLon brothers started crop dusting. Their goal was to eradicate the boll weevils in the cotton fields of northeast Louisiana. This is said to have led to the birth of Delta Airlines. And this small airport in TWILA has been restored by Steve Gustafson, himself a longtime aerial applicator and aerobatics pilot. His son Brad taking off today, just like his father and grandfather did. Another example of a third-generation ag aviation family. Gustafson is now part of the Aeroshell Aerobatic flying team, and he credits his father, Merle, for his passion for the industry.
He taught me how to fly, and he was rough on me, and I'm thankful. I feel him. I still feel him.
So what began on August 3rd in 1921 in Ohio as an experiment to treat catalpa trees by air has grown into an important aspect of agriculture. Aerial applicators enhance food, fiber, protect our forests, and control health-threatening pests. And for this new generation of flyers, it's a chance to follow in their father's footsteps and carry on the family legacy.
It's beyond description, really. You know, watching him fly growing up has always been just unbelievable, and he's his own air show.
For This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, I'm Tammy Arender.
Now, there are several other generational ag aviation pilots in Louisiana, and like many aerial applicators, these pilots also farm as well as fly. Thank you, Tammy, for that great story. With the tropical season heating up, many of us are really hoping that we don't see a repeat of last year's disaster.
Absolutely. That's especially true for one farm couple in southwest Louisiana who are harvesting rice 1 year after hurricanes hammered them. TWILA's Neil Melancon takes us back to the farm of Brandon and Danielle Vale and shows us they've been weathering all kinds of storms in the last year.
While the rice is ripe in southwest Louisiana, past damage is still in focus here. Brandon Vale is running the combine today in his rice field, and close behind his dad Martin is in the grain cart. The wood paneling you see here isn't a trend. It's damage recently repaired from Hurricane Laura.
I initially planted April 9th and then had to replant April 28th, and then I finished up May the 8th. So I'm late this year on my rice. I mean, I've never started planting rice that late.
This is what some of the rice dryers look like after Laura. As you can see, some of the damage has been repaired in the last year, but the Vales are still having trouble finding parts, material, and labor to make them whole.
I got on a list to get stuff put up last February. I had roofs completed on my bins the second week of July. So, I mean, I've got enough capacity to cut the crop that I have.
The last year has brought even more storms and other disasters. This culvert that was blown 800 yards away in Laura was brought back during Hurricane Delta that followed. Now there's the Delta variant from COVID, unending rain, and earlier this year, a winter storm that hurt their cattle. But every cloud has a silver lining, and this spring brought a lot of silver light.
Thankfully, she was born pretty healthy. She stayed in NICU for 22 days, but still pretty healthy. She weighed exactly 4 pounds. She did get her first tractor ride because Brandon went to a meeting and forgot that he had ordered some rice, so the guy showed up with the rice. I had to unload it. And so I had to put her in a little holster and get on the tractor and unload the rice.
Danielle says little Amelia has brought them a sense of purpose they've never known, even with on and off farm jobs and plans for the future. It's hard not to see her point, a bundle of joy desperately needed in southwest Louisiana, where signs of the previous year are still too abundant in the rural countryside.
For a little while, I think Brandon maybe toyed with the idea of stopping farming, And now having a baby and having somebody to teach all of this to kind of changes his mind. You know, she'll get to see the rice and the cattle and the tractors, and he'll be able to teach her all these things that a lot of kids don't get to learn.
Now, Brandon also told me that due to delays from rain and his equipment breaking down, he expects to be harvesting into the second week of September. And guys, I also heard from his neighbor, Jordan Aguilar, who you might remember from last year, who not only had all that damage from the wind and hail and from the hurricanes, but he also didn't have his crop insured. Fortunately, he is still back in. He's pretty much in the same situation as the Vales. He's repairing his rice bins as time goes on, and he's trying to get in, and he is in his fields harvesting right now.
What amazes me is how little has happened in that part of Louisiana, that we're this far out from the storm, and there still has not been any federal emergency money that's made its way there. The mayor of Lake Charles even went on a video campaign to try and get the word out about the situation there, and it's really sad. We have friends there who still haven't fixed their roofs, still don't have a house.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
It is, and it's very sad going down there. The trees have seemed to make more of a recovery than many of the people there. I mean, blue tarps are still all around everywhere you go. I mean, you can see it in some of the video in the package of, you know, stuff that's tipped over that hasn't been back, hasn't been repaired, hasn't been anything done with. And part of that is just that holdup in federal emergency relief.
Well, you've been down there, so you know. Carl and I were there in the spring of last year.
Right.
He was right in the bullseye. He is literally a mile from the Gulf, maybe.
Right.
And when Laura came ashore, that was the first person that I thought about, because they are so close to right where it hit.
And you know, they're a young farm couple, and I mean, as you know, being a young farm couple, if the weather's perfect and the prices are right, it's hard enough on you as is. These are people who haven't been through, or they're in one of the hardest hit industries in rice, and then they had 2 storms on top of that, the freeze, all the damage, the constant rain. I mean, they're still going though. It's just, it shows it's a reflection of their character.
Thank God they're resilient. Thank you very much, Neil Malasaw.
Well, as he said, rice harvest is now in full swing across South Louisiana. That means a lot more activity on the highways surrounding these fields.
That extra equipment on the roads means that we need to be more careful at this time of year as we ride through these areas. This week, TWILA's Carl Wiggers shows us how farmers move from field to field and why we should take an extra minute to be careful on those roads.
Combines are busy across Louisiana. In the north, they're harvesting corn and soon soybeans, and in the south, they're cutting rice. But when these fields are complete, these machines must move on down the road to the next, and that's where an urgent need for safety comes into play.
Safety is always important to everybody. You know, it should be a big priority.
John McLain is a rice farmer in Vermilion Parish. His neighbors can expect an increase in activity on the road near farms at this time of year.
We don't want to see ourselves or anybody else get hurt or cause an accident or be involved in an accident. People may see trucks on different roads that they don't see typically most other times of the year, so we're going in different places that they're not going year-round.
However, Louisiana Farm Bureau's Safety Programs Assistant Matt Sergo says those accidents do happen.
Unfortunately, the majority of traffic fatalities that happen in the U.S. do happen on rural roadways, and heavy machinery is a big part of that as well. So we just all have to work together and just be mindful of each other out on the road.
People need to be more alert and pay attention to what's going on around them. They may see a truck pull out of a drive that they don't normally see there, or most people, they kind of know where they see the tractors and combines on the roads when they're moving around, just because we've been working those fields throughout the year, so they may be expecting that.
As you can see from this drone footage, this equipment is large and it moves slowly. That's why it's important for us to remember these things when taking back roads passing our neighbor's farm.
Well, the biggest thing to remember is that these are your neighbors, and these men and women are doing their best to try to provide us with food on our tables, and they're working long hours. So they'll do their best to accommodate you as they go, because they know that these vehicles are going to be moving a lot slower, and then it does pose a risk. But the fact of the matter is that this equipment does need to get from field to field, and they do have to use public roads as part of that process. So it's just an important thing to remember that these are your neighbors and treat them like that while they work through this time.
In Vermilion Parish, I'm Carl Wiggers for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
Even though rice, corn, and soybean harvest should be wrapped up by October, the state's sugarcane harvest, well, that goes well into January sometimes. That means these extra precautions are important to remember, as we will be seeing these trucks and equipment on the road for quite a while.
And it's also a great way to remember that these farmers on the road are doing the best they can and being as safe as they can to bring their crops to market and put food on our tables. So next time you come across a farmer on the highway, say thank you and with a little friendly wave. Well, still to come on TWILA, we head to the TWILA archives for a tasty beer brewed with Louisiana's finest sweetener.
But first, new research is underway to grow a better crop of Louisiana sugarcane. Stay with us.
Researchers at the LSU Ag Center are looking at irrigation issues related to growing sugarcane.
As Craig Gautreaux shows us, there is a lack of research regarding irrigation of sugarcane, and scientists are working to change that.
Sugarcane is a tropical crop and is typically not irrigated because it's grown in areas that receive plenty of rainfall. But as the sugarcane belt continues to grow northward in Louisiana, irrigation is being used more often. Because so few acres are irrigated, scientists with the LSU Ag Center are beginning to study irrigation practices to develop the most efficient methods.
We don't have a lot of scientific information to help our farmers irrigate when they do need to irrigate. They don't know when or how much to put out.
Conger and area ag agent Justin Dufour have installed several sensors in a field outside of Cheneyville to monitor moisture on and between the rows. The information will be vital in helping to determine the moisture needs of the crop.
These sensors actually allow us to evaluate, how much does this cane crop take up considering the moisture content. So we're able to gather all this data, whether it be from a rainfall event or an irrigation event.
70% of Louisiana's corn crop is irrigated, while less than 5% of the cane's 500,000 acres are. Some parts of central Louisiana have received nearly 70 inches of rain this year, so this year's cane crop may not need any additional water.
We actually don't need irrigation every year in this state. Some seasons we get enough rainfall during that critical growth stage to be fine. Some years we do not.
While many agricultural fields are irrigated, not all fields are compatible for irrigation.
We actually have a lot of oddly shaped fields where we can't get water to it or irrigate it effectively. Those fields will probably never have irrigation.
The researchers hope data gathered from the project will give recommendations for irrigation, which will help conserve water resources. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
Nearly 60% of Louisiana's cotton acres and 40% of its soybean acres are irrigated, so researchers know that adding another crop to the mix will likely affect aquifers across the state. Red beans and rice is a Louisiana staple that has long been a Monday fixture in restaurants in New Orleans because Sunday is wash day. You got to soak your beans on wash day.
It's very true. And in this week's Ag Minute, our friends at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum tell us more about the classic dish and some of the chefs and restaurants in New Orleans that have helped make it famous.
Hi, I'm Liz Williams here at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum, and today we're talking about red beans and rice. And we're here at an exhibit in the museum, the Red Bean Hall of Fame. You know, red beans is a great experience on Mondays in Louisiana, eating great Louisiana rice and red beans. But there's some people who've just made an art of it. So one of them is Willie Mae's restaurant. Willie Mae's was very famous in New Orleans for her fried chicken, but she also had the best red beans and rice on Monday. It was just really delicious. Willie Mae's is still open, and it's definitely a place to go. Buster Holmes Restaurant and Bar. Now, Buster Holmes has passed, and so he's no longer making his red beans and rice, but he made red beans, white beans, pinto beans, black-eyed peas. He made every kind of bean to eat with rice, and he was famous for it. So famous that chefs in New Orleans would go and stage with him so they could learn all about what he did to make his red beans wonderful. And finally, this trumpet represents Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong loved red beans so much that he signed his correspondence, "Red beans and ricely yours." So he gets a place of honor in the Hall of Fame.
To learn more about SOFAB and red beans and rice, visit our website at twilatv.org and pay a visit to the Southern Food and Beverage Museum the next time you're in New Orleans.
Still to come on TWILA, it's one of my favorite subjects, and Kristen knows it.
Beer, it's what's for dinner. In the TWILA Boost, up next.
As TWILA's 40th anniversary approaches, we continue to stroll down memory lane with another Boost-worthy video from the TWILA archives.
In the last 40 years, we've had no shortage of alcohol-related stories on TWILA. I don't know who's done more, you or me.
We're pretty close. We're pretty close because we've done breweries, distilleries, and you did
the first legal moonshiner, which my grandmother was not happy about, but it was a great story. And this week, TWILA's Carl Wiggers takes us back to Broussard, Louisiana, where he tapped into a hot new brew at Parish Brewing Company.
Before you can enjoy a glass of your favorite beer at Parish Brewing, a lot of work happens here in the brewery to bring that flavor to your lips. This is the last step of the process under this roof. However, this is not where this beer began.
One of the most popular beers here at Parish Brewing is Canebrake. It's the original. It's the first beer that Andrew Godley, the owner, conceived and started to brew in his own garage 7 years ago right here in Broussard, Louisiana.
Got the brewery started in my garage, and I was brewing little 5-gallon batches. I'd have 12, 13 batches going on at once, trying different things. I was brewing Canebrake back then, trying to perfect the recipe.
Canebrake is the product of Godley's love of beer, his chemical engineering degree, and countless acres of sugarcane that surround his hometown. He would take his dog for a run through the cane fields around his house and plan what we know today as Parish Brewing.
Sugarcane just popped. It was just obvious this is a major Louisiana staple, and so I immediately started brewing beers with sugarcane in it. It makes Canebrake a very unique, one-of-a-kind beer. I don't think there's another beer in the world that's made with sugarcane syrup like that. And it uses a straight-up Louisiana 100% local product.
That product is this cane syrup, produced only 10 miles away. Lessie Ferguson is a longtime fan of Parish Brewing and works here in the tap room. She says her guests are always excited to hear a name they recognize being used in a beer they love.
And people are always really interested and really excited about the idea that we do not only use Louisiana products, but that it's a name that they recognize. Everybody recognizes Steen's cane syrup.
Not only is it unique and differentiated in the grand scheme of beer, but it's truly local. Nobody can make a beer more local than Canebrake.
By us being a local company and using local products, it brings it more at home. People feel more comfortable. It just doesn't seem right that we would be a local company without using local products.
The local people understand the product. They know what sugarcane syrup is because it is a part of our local culture, the sugarcane farming and sugarcane syrup. People use Steens on their pancakes all the time around here.
In a way, Parish Brewing began while Godley was working off in Pennsylvania. That's where he experienced a craft beer culture unlike anything back home in Louisiana.
I came back home to Louisiana and realized there was a big opportunity missing, and that I thought entrepreneurially it would be a good idea to start a brewery. At that time, there was only a Beta.
Godley knows that Louisiana consumers love to eat, drink, and have a great time. But those consumers also want quality. And that's what his local brewery is bringing to the table.
Local beers are always the freshest beers, and the freshest beers are always the best beers.
Well, that does it for this edition of TWILA. Be sure to join us next week when we'll show you how congressional staffers are learning firsthand about Louisiana farms.
Until then, you can watch all of our stories online at twilatv.org, and be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and anywhere else that you can find on social media. You can also find all of these stories on our YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you know when we put out new stuff.
For all of us here at TWILA, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again right here next week.